All right.
All right, ladies, this is Unit 2 and 3. I'm Heather,
Fabiana.
Jessica.
and I'm going to start off with our first um, reading. I did the 2017 for Nordic schools. So they mentioned that student success needed to be at the center. They needed real world skills to improve the outcomes. Lifelong learning, which we've talked a lot about. More engaged learning is on the rise. They talked about summative assessments are now online in Denmark and Norway. I thought that was interesting. There's a push for STEAM, pushing forward from STEM, and students are becoming creators. So some of the trends that they are pushing towards: one-to-one program, each student has a device, coding, redesign learning spaces, some longer-term trends, entrepreneurship is going to be integrated, continuous assessment rather than summative. I think we kind of do that here. Rethink how how schools work. Some of the challenges that the blending learning while integrating technology, they talked about old-fashioned learning versus the integrated. They have to kind of blend that. Digital equity and balancing connected with unconnected life, and then teaching complex thinking with an achievement gap. So some important developments: 3D printing, games and gamification, makerspace, mobile learning, adaptive learning technologies. They would adapt to whatever the student needs. Artificial intelligence, mixed reality, robots, speech-to-speech translation, virtual and remote labs, virtual assistants, and wearable technology. Those all kind of go along with the ISTE standards to design and develop digital assessments. That's in Norway, and they were doing the digital assessments rather than paper. And then to empower the learner, where the student has an active role. I think all of those would kind of go along and make the student more active versus the teacher being so active.
Okay, I selected the 2016 NMC Significant Challenges Impeding Technology Adoption in Higher Education. And even though I work at a K-4 school, I was just interested in seeing what their challenges were versus our challenges. This slide just talks about the way that it's set up. The article is basically, this section of the article talked about 6 challenges, and they identified the committee that looked at them as solvable, difficult, or wicked, which basically meant it was too complex to define and they needed more data before they could come to a solution. Once they identified the challenge, they looked into the 3 areas, which was policy, leadership, and practice. Next slide. So the first challenge was blending formal learning and that's not supposed to say information learning, it's informal learning. Sorry, that was a typo. Which if you see over to the right, it says solvable. So I just took some quotes out of the article that were what stood out to me, basically saying that they think blending formal and informal learning will create an environment that fosters experimentation, curiosity, and above all, creativity in students. What they define as informal learning is that it recognizes knowledge acquisition that can happen at any given moment, no matter how casual the environment. So for example, a child that's really into graphic design, they might have taken courses or YouTube videos and self-learning, but then when they get to college, they have to go like to Intro 101 of graphic design, and they might already know a bit more. The challenge with this is that most institutions still speak in the language of credits, and they haven't found a good method yet to be able to quantify that and say, okay, well, you did this informal learning and this equates this many college credits. So that's what they're working on. The European Commission invites European Union countries. They've been asking them to start developing a system where it does enable individuals to obtain qualifications based on informal experiences. And actually the Cork Institute of Technology in Ireland, they talked about non-formal learning, kind of like prior learning, which made me think of how we do pre-tests. As an educator, we kind of want to know if I'm introducing a new math concept, how much of these kids already know about this. So you do a pre-test to kind of gauge where to lead your instruction. When I hear of this or formal or prior learning, I kind of thought it was similar. This is a very long quote, but it's interesting. This trailer, which stands for Tagging, Recognition, and Acknowledgement of Informal Learning Experiences, it has 7 participating universities in Europe that they've been tasked to try to address the issue, and they are using this method to have learners identify what and how they are learning, facilitated in a dialogue with their institutions, but it's basically an online portfolio, a tech portfolio, where they are kind of justifying or showing evidence for this informal learning that they're doing, kind of like to prove this is what I know, this is how I did it, to see if that would give them some kind of credit. All right, I will talk faster. So the next one was about improving digital literacy. And that's something that's it's a catchphrase right now, right? We use it a lot. It was interesting to see that there's 2 different definitions. Some educators consider it a competence with a wide range of digital tools for varied educational purposes, while others see it as an indicator of an ability to critically evaluate web resources. Even though both definitions are broad and ambiguous, the issue is the notion that digital literacy differs for educators and for learners. So teaching with technology is different than learning with it. The American Library Association defines digital literacy as the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, understand, evaluate, create, and communicate digital information, an ability that requires both cognitive and technical skills. So there's still a lot out there in our community as far as what digital literacy actually means, but we all agree that it is not a checklist of technical skills, but it should promote critical thinking and reflection. I thought it was interesting too that there's such a thing as digital curation, which basically the Higher Education Academy defines it as the act of finding, selecting, grouping, and contextualizing, preserving, and maintaining and archiving digital resources. And this kind of made me think of when we talk to kids about how they use the internet and the resources. Is it a verifiable? Is it something you can't believe everything you read on the internet? Kind of made me think of fake news. They are out there making sure that the resources we have available to use for this type of digital learning is actually good. The bottom says students today are more digitally literate since they are growing up in a tech-rich environment. It made me think of a quote that I sat in about 2 years ago at a tech training that it said, "Prepare me for my future, not your past." So I think as we look at how we came up as students, and it was different. I used the Dewey Decimal System. You had a card catalog. These kids have Google. They don't have to do that. Or they go to the library. You search differently. Yes, you need to know how to use pen and paper, a paper book, but you also need to prepare these kids for the life that they're going to live in, which is this digital world that we're in. An interesting statistics from this part of what we read was that in 2015, 1 in every 4 millennials said they want to improve their digital literacy, but 37% of them said they found the internet scary, which was not the same as people in the age of not even the same age group, 35 plus. So age just apparently does not play a role in being comfortable with technology. All right, and this last part says balancing our connected and unconnected lives, and they determined this one to be wicked, meaning they can find a real solution to it. But basically, it's preventing kids from getting lost in the abundant sea of digital tools that university and colleges are tasked with encouraging them to use, and make them aware of their digital footprint and the implications of that. And that's something that even here at my campus with pre-K kids, we have to address. Anything you do on the internet and what that implies. And also that instructors have to start offering opportunities where they reflect on these experiences and develop character and integrity. Baylor University had a study out they were talking about convenience of digital tools versus addiction. And they found that college students spend anywhere from 8 to 10 hours on their smartphones. So the debate is, are they wasting time or have they become overly dependent on their devices? Yes, we know that we have to multitask and you have classwork and extracurricular activities, social life, but this kind of alludes to the notion that one is available at all times. So if I can check my email, if I get work texts, if I can have all that on my phone, am I expected to always be working and always be addressing? And that happens as a tech specialist. I have work email on my phone, and sometimes it is Saturday night on the weekend, and I will get a text message, hey, how do I do this with my printer? Or I'm having this problem logging on. And part of me wants to say, it is Friday or Saturday at 9 o'clock. This is my off time, but the other part of me feels responsible. They know I got this email. Should I address it? So I can totally relate to that. And then the last thing is a quote from, or statistics from the Michigan State researchers about bringing your own device. High-performing students struggle to use their devices for productive activities, such as taking notes while managing the accompanying distractions of actually having your phone. And I think if we're honest, this even happens with adults at meetings, that we could get easily distracted. All right, I know that was a lot. Jessica?
You got your, so we're going past the SMART model?
Yeah, they can look at it later.
All right, so the Horizon report that I chose was the 2017 Library Edition Trends Accelerating Technology Adoption in Academic and Research Libraries. This was split up into long-term, mid-term, and short-term trends, with long-term being 5 years or more, mid-term trends happening over the 3 to 5 years, and short-term trends happening in 1 to 2 years. In each of these sections, there were 2 things that were specifically addressed, and then we'll go into those in the next slides. So on our long-term trends, 5 or more years, let me make sure I see what you guys see. Perfect. We had cross-institution collaboration, which I thought was really exciting. We were trying to unite libraries, so it wouldn't just be my library's resources. We would look at resources from different libraries, and not just from inside your my district, right? They were looking at going across international borders. So I thought that was super exciting. They were trying to combine research and resources. This has already been done on a collegiate level. So we have multiple colleges that are putting their resources together. And this helps to tackle budget cuts. I know I've been working as a 9th grade algebra teacher, but I'm looking to become a librarian, and they cut budgets every day. I've had to switch states because of budget cuts. So to be able to put these resources together in order to use the money most efficiently, I think is an awesome idea. However, we have to create a technological platform to store all this data. So you have to figure out what's the best way to inseminate it all. Also under long-term trends, we had evolving nature of scholarly record. Most things used to be print-based, and that's no longer the case. When you're looking for scholarly research and whatnot, it's network-based now. So everything is published in a more timely fashion. We can have a meeting right now, like we're doing, and then we can post it moments after. So that's what we're looking at as far as research goes. And the fact that it can include more types of information. So things aren't just going to be what you're reading, right? It's going to be more videos. There are going to be more interactive programs that are available. And then you're going to have those blog type interactions, which was interesting to me because we did have to just create a blog. So these are things that can happen in research as well. So these are things that the library is going to have to be ready for over the next 5 or more years. In our midterm trends between 3 and 5 years, we're looking at patrons being more of creators. Learning's happening by creation. Students aren't coming into the library just to check out books anymore. They're coming into the library looking for a place where they can finish their projects, create things in order to receive the learning. So we have to make sure that the library has the tools to do that. They talked a lot about libraries having 3D printers, having that access to virtual reality, making sure that all of our computers and laptops and iPads and tablets are all there available for these students so they can have access to the digital and technological information that they need in order to create, in order to learn. Rethinking library spaces. It's not only a place to find information, but it's going to be a place to create. So we need to make sure that we have spaces for that as well. They're examining patron behavior for budget considerations. We need to know where the money's going to go. We can't use our entire budget trying to, put books on the shelves. That is no longer the case. We need to make sure that we have the resources for the technological learning that they're doing nowadays. And I don't know. I love literature. However, this is the way it's going, and we need to make sure that we're keeping up with the changing times. And then we need to make space for more active learning spaces. So you want to have that maker space. You want to have a space where they can, print out everything they need and have that, three-dimensional printer, all that fun stuff. So 3 to 5 years for that. And then last but not least, our short-term trends over the next 1 to 2 years. Research data management, research formats have changed, and we did talk about that. Everything's not going to be in print. Most of it is going to be digital, visual, interactive, so on and so forth. So we need to make sure that we can keep up with what's happening and how these collections are living resources. They're always changing, they're always being added to, and we need to try and find a way to make these resources available and easy to grab for these students, right? Because I'm looking at a library for high school students, so we need to make sure they can manage these things as they continue to change and evolve. And then last but not least, we have valuing the user experience. This is the quality of interactions with services and products inside the library. So we want to make sure that this is a space that is usable, that they can understand where to go to get things. They can navigate all of the databases. That's what we're looking for here. And then researching and identifying needs of the user. So we have to figure out where the needs are for our students nowadays and make sure that the library is catering to all of those things. And as far as the ISTE standards goes, I thought that this had almost everything to do with the ISTE standard for students. That number one, empowering the learner. As a librarian, we're looking at everything that's happening and trying to make sure that these kids can get what they need in order to be successful in our digital age. So that's what it was all about, making sure these kids can get what they need. Thank you.
All right, ladies, that was awesome, and to see how it interacted and kind of overviewed the ISTE standards along with all 3 of those Horizon reports. Thank you.
Yeah.